This is thinking back to everything that ever was, or ever can be.
I want to talk about the community today because I feel like it's changed since I originally started watching the show back in 2019. To me, 2019 was not that long ago, and I remember discovering my first ever episode of Peter Capaldi with Bill Potts.
Potts?
Yeah.
Bill Potts.
And I will say, I was changed forever since I've seen that episode. I'm obsessed with Doctor Who. I have a tattoo. It's on my leg and it's there forever now. It has taught me a lot of life lessons and a lot of ways of dealing with certain... if you're a Doctor Who fan, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Doctor Who has been a big part of teenage Gabby and of a time when I was really dealing with a lot of stuff in my personal life. I found Doctor Who right at that moment where I needed it the most. And I think that's how it works with most Whovians, is you find this show that just completely changes your worldview, and it just shifts your whole entire life perspective. It isn't just a TV show with a madman in a box. It's a whole lifestyle attached to it almost. And I think people just think, oh, you're kind of weird because you like this TV show about time and space. But it's like, no, I like the values that it teaches me, and I like that it is always expansive and is always trying to talk about things that are difficult for most people. And that's what makes Doctor Who the best TV show for me, is the fact that it isn't just a TV show. It's more than that. It's something that you can talk to someone about because it brings up life things that normally we don't want to.
Real world is not a fairy tale.
The universe generally fails to be a fairy tale. That's where we come in.
If we even give much thought to it at all. From historical episodes talking about Rosa Parks.
Stand up now.
I don't think I should have to.
Vincent van Gogh to
me, Van Gogh is the finest painter of them all. Certainly the most popular great painter of all time. The most beloved. His command of color, the most magnificent. He transformed the pain of his tormented life into ecstatic beauty. The world's greatest artist, but also one of the greatest men who ever lived.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
you're just kind of there in the episode with them, and you're just learning all of these different life experiences with them. And I think that's what really made me enjoy the show, is that it encapsulates what it is to try and find yourself. Throughout all of his adventures is always trying to find himself and themselves, I should say, because there's also Jodie. We're not going to forget about her. Hi, Queen. The Doctor is always trying to find themselves, and they're always trying to learn what it is to be the Doctor, to be a Time Lord in a place that is always ostracizing them. The Doctor is not always accepted into society because he isn't a person, and he's quirky and he's weird, and people are always kind of giving him the side eye a little bit until they realize who he really is.
Who the hell are you? I'm the Doctor, and I just snogged Madame de Pompadour.
Just completely understood what that felt like. For the longest time, I have always been someone who is always kind of in the shadows, and always someone who was always trying to find themselves and trying to figure out what I liked, what I didn't like, what was my purpose, what were things to help me with that. And Doctor Who was something that helped me with that. Because I'm autistic, and being a woman that's autistic in a society that wants perfection is something I was never able to provide. I'm not a perfect woman from society's standpoint, and I'm not what people want me to be. That the Doctor isn't what society expects him to be. He's the complete opposite. He's someone who just does his own thing and saves the day because of it. Because no matter where you fall into an episode, you can always kind of pick up on what's going on. You don't need to know the whole story arc. It helps. You don't always have to start at the beginning. You don't have to start with Christopher Eccleston or William Hartnell, for example, but you could just end up starting at a weird point. I started with Peter Capaldi. Peter Capaldi was my first Doctor, and I was obsessed. I was drawing Peter Capaldi all of the time, and I loved his dynamic with Bill Potts. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. Here was a alien and a human talking about life, and for some reason they both understood each other, and that fully sucked me in. A Time Lord communicating with a human, and not only were they communicating, they were becoming best friends. Doctor Who isn't a romance or a mystery or a thriller. It's kind of everything. It's not just sci-fi. It's a amalgamation of everything. No matter what type of TV show you're trying to find, usually you can find yourself within some Doctor Who episode. That's what's so great about this. It's something that everyone can communicate on. Have opinions that we like or dislike, that's a different story. And so I wanted to talk about this because Doctor Who has been something that I've always loved and enjoyed. Yet somehow I find it's getting more hate than I've ever seen since I started watching this show. Watching in 2019, and I know that this is usually something that happens quite frequently. I've seen people who aren't even in the Doctor Who fan club, if we want to call it that, community, start talking about it in a negative light. And I think it's because it's getting too political. And to me, and to most Doctor Who fans, we don't see it. And the reason we don't see it is because we're used to it. It's Doctor Who. It's supposed to be political. It's supposed to be radical. It's supposed to be something that makes you think, ponder, and even second guess your own opinions. This has been contention for most people who don't watch the show, that are just now finding out that the Doctor is black, and now the show is too leftist. I'm not someone who really falls for either right or left, and quite frankly, I could care less. Politics have always been in the show, and who has always been political.
Doctor, we're not going fishing again, are we?
No. From now on, it's a healthy vegetarian diet for both of us.
No room to move, polluted air, not a blade of grass left on the planet, and a government that locks you up if you think for yourself.
At least I fed you.
Of a sealing compound for undersea structures. It's lethal to marine and reptile life. I thought they would have banned it by now.
Is it getting too political? Is it hitting the nail on the head too hard? Does it really matter? I don't agree with the politics in Doctor Who, because Doctor Who has always been political and has always had its own opinions. And the Doctor even questions this in the show quite frequently. Am I a good man?
The answer to my next question, which must be honest and cold and considered, without kindness or restraint. Clara, be my pal. And tell me, am I a good man?
Because he doesn't know. He doesn't know where he's going and he doesn't have a plan. And the master quite frequently teases the doctor about this. He wants to be a good person, Time Lord. He wants to be the hero. But most of the time the doctor doesn't end up being the hero. Most of the time the doctor ends up being the odd one out. The doctor usually ends up being the victim, ends up getting hurt within the process. And there's some grief there. Like Doctor Who, because it's too political, I beg the question, have you actually watched the show? Have you actually watched Doctor Who and understood the plot? Doctor Who is a show that's supposed to make you think. Doctor Who is a show that's supposed to make you just enjoy the ride. Doctor Who is a show that is teaching you how to live your own life. It helps you to question what life path you're on, what timeline you're in. If I was in the situation of the Doctor, what type of person would I be? So I just wanted to make this because I think a lot of people are giving Doctor Who a bad name at the moment, and I think it's just because you're not watching the show. You're not giving it a chance, and I think you need to give it a chance. My favorite Doctor has always eluded me. The Doctor is the same person, yet different people all through our lives. Every single person that you ever were is completely different than the person that you are today. Think about it, a couple years ago, I was completely different than I am today. And I think that's what life does to you. Take the time that you have and try and make the best out of it. The doctor has every single thing he could ever want at his fingertips, yet he still has to beg the question of, who am I? What am I doing? My favorite Doctor has always eluded me, yet for the longest time it was David Tennant, for the longest time it was Peter Capaldi, and then for the longest time it was Christopher Eccleston. So I never really know who my favorite Doctor is, and even now that I've seen some of the classic Who, I'm like, oh, Tom Baker, or sometimes I sit there and I'm like, oh, if only Paul McGann had a little bit more screen time, I think, show. And Doctor Who has always been a place where I could just watch the television show and kind of forget about the worries of my real life. Time dimension for just a little bit, even if it's 40 minutes of my time. Alright, so I'm not going to talk about classic Doctors because I really can't talk about a lot of the classic Doctors, only because I don't know a lot about them. I haven't seen a lot of the classic Who, so I'm going to be honest. Can't give much of an opinion. I'll say Tom Baker is a really great Doctor, and I also love Paul McGann. Paul McGann, I love you. The Eighth Doctor had his own film, and I love the film.
Genetic experiment.
I don't think so.
France.
Gallifrey! Yes! Yellow, yes! What? Shoes! They fit perfectly.
These shoes, they fit perfectly. Paul McGann, and I really do wish that he had his own season. I know he's got Big Finish audios that you can listen to, but it's just not the same. Christopher Eccleston as well only had one season, and he did amazing with it. Christopher Eccleston was when the Doctor was rugged and going through a lot. He had just come out of the Time War, and he's focused on how he could have fixed this wrong that he had done to his whole entire
Everything has its time and
life,
everything does.
basically. And I just love Christopher Eccleston because he just encapsulates the Doctor's pain, and he tries so hard to become who he wants to be.
You think it'll last forever? People and cars and concrete, but it won't. One day it's all gone. even the sky.
It's not working. Fantastic! I demand orders! They're never gonna come! Your race is dead! You all burn, all of you. 10 million ships on fire. The entire Dalek race wiped out in one...
Watched it happen.
I made it happen!
You had no choice.
And what of the Time Lords?
Dead. They burnt with you. The end of the last great time war. But there's no one else coming because there's no one else left.
I am alone in the universe. So are you.
Next we have David Tennant. A lot of people love David Tennant for because if you look back at them, they are kind of kooky and kind of weird, but I think that's what I like about them. I think that the episodes themselves are kind of weird and kind of kooky, but you know, David Tennant is the charmer of the Doctor. He is the I can do anything I want and get away with it type of Doctor. And that's why he came back as the 14th Doctor, I think, because people love that aspect of the Doctor. He still has that pain attached to him from Christopher Eccleston and the Time War and the pure grief that the Doctor has, but he's still the bubbly, let's do whatever we want with Rose Tyler Doctor. And a lot of people hate him and Rose Tyler. I actually really think it's adorable, but that's my personal opinion. But I just love David Tennant. I love that he's got his spiky hair and trench coat in his Converse, and he just has the best comeback lines ever for any episode that there is with David Tennant. He always has a reason for the things that he does, and I just love that this Doctor, the 10th Doctor, has not the 14th Doctor. I'm not getting to that point yet, but the 10th variation of David Tennant is just spot on for the 10th Doctor. I think David Tennant really encapsulates that for a lot of the Doctor Who fans. A little too on the nose, maybe a little too quirky and a little too weird. But you know, that's the beautiful thing about Doctor Who, is that some people like certain Doctors, some people dislike certain variants, and that's fine. I love David Tennant. I'm not too sure about the episodes. Some of them are, I'm just thinking of the Slovene right now for some reason, just like unzip themselves and they just end up farting. Like, it's eras that it is kooky, it's silly, it's weird, and that's what makes Doctor Who Doctor Who. David Tennant has a complicated relationship with Rose. I think a lot of people hate this dynamic and think that it's weird that the Doctor is preying upon a teenage human, and he really isn't. It's not like he forced her to like fall in love with him. She fell in love with him organically. Like, she watched him transform from Christopher Eccleston into David Tennant, and let's be honest, who wouldn't fall in love with that man? Have you seen him? I don't blame you, Rose. I honestly wish I was. But I think that's also just being a woman versus a man. A lot of the men that I watch on talk about Doctor Who or talk about David Tennant, it's like, oh, David Tennant was just a sex symbol, and David Tennant was just there to be nice to look at. And it's like, well, yeah, there is a few scenes where you can just sit there and be like, and then there's also a few scenes where you're like, that's the Doctor, and that's the Doctor that everyone knows and loves. And the way that he runs, and the way that he just is able to talk to certain people, and the way that he's able to handle a situation very well. He's very in his masculine energy, and I think that's why a lot of men are like, this is what it means to be a man. I think David Tennant's Doctor really encapsulates what it is to be both masculine yet feminine at times, yet still soft and still able to empathize with people, still able to communicate with other characters in a way that conveys emotion and conveys empathy and compassion. And at the same time, there's that grief still in the back of his mind that is really just a fire burning within himself, and he just feels the need to be this dark person inside of himself, yet and was trying his hardest to change, yet at the same time he wasn't ready to change. He wasn't ready to make that next step. But then we get into Matt Smith. Times when Matt Smith encapsulates the Doctor for me, and then there's also times where I'm like, he's just a breath of fresh air. He's completely different from Christopher Eccleston, Paul McGann, or even any of the classic Doctors. He's just Matt Smith. He's just the 11th Doctor, and I think that's why a lot of people really love Matt Smith, because he's weird and he's quirky and he's funny, and not in the way that David Tennant was, but because in the way that Matt Smith is. He's just himself, and he's like, I got a little name tag on my lapel that says I'm the Doctor, or I like bow ties now. Bow ties are cool, Stetsons are cool, fezzes are cool, like Geronimo, like there's just certain things about Matt Smith that is uniquely him and is also still the Doctor. We still have, even with Matt Smith, that grumbliness, that pain, that heartache, and I think that that stays consistent throughout most of modern Doctor Who, and we'll get into that here soon, but this is when the Doctor starts to, I wouldn't say leave some of that behind, but definitely starts to shift. And this is where the Doctor starts to change into being uniquely himself. And I love Matt Smith with River Song. I shouldn't say Matt Smith. I love the 11th Doctor with River Song. I love the concept of River Song, and I really love the Ponds, Amy Pond and Rory Pond. Both of them together were a really great combination, and then with the Doctor was a great combination. I like how the Doctor accidentally lost track of time, and now he isn't with Amy anymore. And Amy had to live her entire life thinking she was crazy, thinking she was schizophrenic, thinking she had some sort of delusion. But no, this was not a mystery man. It was the Doctor, and he comes back into her life, and there's really nothing he can do about it. She had to endure all of this trauma of thinking and waiting for someone to be there who promised that he would come back and then never did. I really love that concept. And then I also really love that he just continues to bother the crap out of both Amy and Rory, but I like Matt Smith. There are certain episodes that are just like in David Tennant's era, questionable, but I think that's what we love about Doctor Who, is there's always questionable moments in Doctor Who, no matter what season you're in, no matter what episode you're watching. There's always episodes for anyone that makes you go, that's kind of cringy, that's kind of weird, but that's what makes it Doctor Who. All of these different places, and watching as that Doctor is trying to mature into that Doctor's character. And every character within the Doctor has their own story arc. And I really love Matt Smith's story arc. How he starts off as this Doctor that's trying to really remember what it was like to go through all of the pain that he went through. And then he starts to find an inner happiness within himself with Rory and Amy. And then he finds Clara, and Clara's almost like a puzzle to him that he's trying to figure out, and that he's trying to put together. And I think we see some of that grief kind of mystify him a little bit, but take a back seat for a little bit, and we get to see this Doctor fully become himself, go from a 180. He had a good amount of series with him as well, so he had some good screen time. Next Doctor I have is the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi. And Peter Capaldi, for me, is my Doctor. And if I really had to put it down to who's my favorite Doctor, and I can't pick anybody else, I really would say Peter Capaldi. Peter Capaldi was the first Doctor that I had ever seen. Peter Capaldi and Bill Potts, the pilot episode was the first episode I had ever watched. If you don't want to start from the beginning of the reboot, you can watch the pilot, and it really just sucked me in. But yeah, I really love Peter Capaldi. He's just, the man is just the Doctor. I don't know how to describe it other than he just really is just the Doctor. Like, I love that he's matured from being this really charming David Tennant to a really goofy Matt Smith to now he is got an essence of both, right? He's still got that goofiness to him a little bit, but at the same time he's matured. He's really trying to ask these deep hitting questions. I mean, when Peter Capaldi took over the show, he really started asking those hard-hitting questions of what it is to be the Doctor. He starts really developing a relationship with Clara, and not in a romantic sense, but in a familiar sense, that he almost like becomes best friends with her, and it's really hard for him to lose her because he just has like this protectiveness over her. He has this sense of duty to protect, and it's not just to protect her but to protect everyone around him. He grows these really deep-rooted relationships with all of his companions, and he's able to really take the reins in a sense and become the Doctor that we all aspire to be, at least for me. Peter Capaldi is also just a really badass Doctor in my opinion. He looks older, and so in a sense that for me that makes him almost more regal and more charming in a sense, because you can really tell his age both physically and in the show's sense you can tell his age because this man has just been through it. I mean, at this point the Doctor has lived multiple lives, multiple regrets, multiple heartaches. He's just been through the ringer, and he comes out the other side with this energy of this badass energy of, you can't tell me what to do, I know what I'm doing, you can take the back seat and you can follow me. And that's just really intense. Especially we have Heavenson and Hellbent, and with those two episodes alone together are just a masterpiece. It's the way that the episodes are written. It's the way that Peter Capaldi plays the Doctor, but it's also the hard-hitting questions that continue to get pushed throughout the seasons of him being the Doctor.
The first second of eternity with a fast.
And so I really love Peter Capaldi because he's able to weather those questions, and he's able to really just continues to grow as a character even through his last regeneration. And I remember when he regenerated, I cried because it was just like he had just really been through it. And even as someone who had not seen all of the Doctors before him, when he regenerated, he was a completely different Doctor. He was a completely different person. So Jodie Whittaker, I'm gonna be honest, I haven't seen a lot of her episodes, so I can't really speak on her. Gets a lot of backlash, and a lot of hate. People talk about Jodie Whittaker and Chris Chibnall in a bad light. And just if you even mention her name, it's like you're gonna get ostracized. But she was the Doctor, and she always will be. And so now when I say the Doctor, I can't say he all the time because she exists, right? So I could say they. But she just completely changed the Doctor's personality in a good way, I think. She was able to bring a new life to the character, kind of like Matt Smith did, but in a different way. She was able to be, I think a lot of people don't like the fact that she's a woman, but she really does play the Doctor in an androgynous way. I wouldn't say that she is innately feminine, and I wouldn't say she's innately masculine either, but none of the other Doctors that we've had are either or. Gender is not a constructive bias for the Doctor. The Doctor just lives as themselves. This Doctor has fully changed, and it's not just now Whittaker. As I see myself in her from the episodes that I've watched, she's a very strong, independent, womanly figure, but she also plays the role very androgynously. She really encapsulates what it is to be a powerful leader, and I think she shows that no matter what is thrown at her, she's able to come up with a solution. I really think Jodie Whittaker gets a lot of hate, and I have not seen a lot of the episodes, so I can't really talk about The Timeless Child or Flux because I haven't seen those episodes, so I can't tell you what that's like. Every single Doctor there has ever been has been unique, has had their things, has had their moments to shine and their moments to not shine, has had their questionable moments and has had their shining moments. And to say that one Doctor is better than another is not great. So I think you can't really put an opinion on one moment of the Doctor because the Doctor is an ever-changing thing. That's the whole premise of the show, and if you're missing that, then you're missing the point of the show. It's always changing, it's always asking questions, it's always political, and it's always human in a weird way because this is an alien we're watching, yet at the same time there's a lot of human elements in the show, and it's really just a great show to watch. I recommend it more, and I am proud to have a TARDIS tattooed on my leg because when I got my tattoo, it wasn't just about Doctor Who, okay? I know a lot of people would be like, wow, that's like, you're a really big Doctor Who fan. It's like, well, yeah, but that's not why I got the TARDIS. The TARDIS is about possibility, traveling to places you've never been before. And also it's about time on Earth here, But if we had more time, what can we do with that? And I think that's what the TARDIS is the TARDIS is an endless world of possibility. I mean, you could end up fully across the universe to another planet, or you could end up in the timeline that you're in, or the timeline you haven't been in yet, or a timeline that you've been in the past. Or it's just, for me, the TARDIS is about learning to love the moment that you're in, because the TARDIS can bring you to any point in time, but you have to weather that moment. You have to be in that moment, no matter where you're at, no matter what timeline. You have to be in that moment. Or TARDIS is what's teaching the lessons. The TARDIS takes the Doctor where the Doctor needs to go, not where the Doctor wants to go. Trial and stipulation to it. And so that's what I love about the TARDIS, is that the TARDIS also is a sentient being in itself. It's infinite, it's living, and it's loving, and it's at the same time always looking out for its pilot, always looking out for the Doctor. It knows where to take its passengers, and it knows where you need to be. And that's why I got the tattoo. That's why I got the tattoo. But it isn't just that I love Doctor Who. I love the TARDIS specifically because it's unlike any other, time machine we've ever seen. It's not just a time machine, it's the TARDIS, time and relative dimension in space. It's so uniquely Doctor Who, and it's so uniquely special to me. Yes, Doctor Who has always been special to me and will always be special to me. And I hope that it's special to you too. And if you've never seen Doctor Who, I highly recommend that you give it a chance. If you like this video, guys, please leave me a thumbs up and subscribe. I make videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. If you like that sort of thing, you should subscribe. I also make all kinds of things. So, there's something here for everyone. Like Doctor Who, I'll probably make more Doctor Who videos. So, thanks for watching. Bye!